Hello! So today we are going to take a further look at the ATR in Microsoft Flight Simulator. We're going to do a circuit of Stansted Airport following a flight plan. So if we go and have a quick look at Little Nav Map, you can see the route we're going to take. So we're going to fly out runway 22 out to Ekvej, then Odoku, then Brain, Abbott, up gear and back into Stansted. So this should serve as a good shakedown to make sure that the processes I'm going to follow work functionally. So I won't be doing lots of the checks and balances that real pilots use. I'll just be going methodically through all the systems in the cockpit and having a nose around basically and doing things in a sensible manner. I am following a written checklist that I am still evolving. The biggest struggle with this aircraft so far is there is no official documentation for it. So we are all pretty much following our nose and trying to crib from whatever operational flight plans we can find on the internet for the aircraft type and trying to make them match against what has been simulated so far in the aircraft. There are bugs in the aircraft at the moment, so I have no doubt there will be an update in the coming days and weeks. So for the moment though, we'll see what we can do. Okay, first thing to do is look at your controller and make sure all of your levers and switches and axes are in the right places, ready to start the airplane up. The next thing you do is you go inside the airplane and we go to the tablet, which we can use Control 3 to get to the tablet. And in the tablet we go to the aircraft tab and we make sure that all the doors are closed, which they are, wheel chocks are in place, and we go and put the ground power in place. So having done that, we can jump overhead in the airplane and we can go and turn the battery on. So we uncage the battery switch and use the mouse wheel to roll it forwards to the on position, and power comes on in the aircraft. And if you go and look around, you will see things booting up slowly. If you want to expedite this, you can press Control 6 and you can then go and you'll see external power is now available because we connected it in the tablet, and we can switch external power on. You see lights come on all of a sudden and more systems are powered up immediately as a result. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is go and program the flight. So we're going to go Control 4, which will take us down to the view of the MCDU. We go to the FMS1 option, we click on Init, we go to Position Initialization, we pick up the GPS position, which drops it into the scratch pad, and then drop that into the initialized position field, and then we can return, and then we can do the weight next. This is quite an interesting one. So to get the 0 fuel weight, we go Control 3 on the tablet, look in payload, and you can see an empty weight of 11,550. So then if we go Control 4 to come back to here, we put in 11,550 and drop it into 0 fuel weight. Now FOB is fuel on block. There's no easy way of getting this, I've found, from the aircraft. So your easiest method, I imagine in the real world you would read it from your operational flight plan. So we can look in the weight and balance, and we can only get it in pounds, we can't get it in kilograms, which is the default scale used in the ATR. So we've got roughly 5,060 pounds. Okay, so what we're going to do is run a calculator in Windows. 5,060 divided by 2.205 will give us the kilograms, so 2295 kilograms. So 2295. That calculates the gross weight for us, and then we can come back in and we can continue on. Now notice if we go to Performance Initialization, we have now got, well, I've gone to the wrong page here by the way. If we go to the Performance button, sorry, within the aircraft, you suddenly should get some, this is the different phases of flight by the way, but this will all be calculated. There we go, the V speeds, they will be pre-filled for you. Yeah, if you have not got the weights in, these will be empty fields, and if you fill them by hand you'll get an alert saying that you have manually set them, but the aircraft will automatically figure it out for you. Okay, so if we go to back to menu, back to FMS, back to Init, we'll go and program our route in. So if we go to Flight Plan Initialization, go to Route, we're going to go from EGSS, which is the ICAO code for Stansted, to EGSS. So we're matching the format of the field in what we type. Then we press it in the soft key and it fills it in for us, and we can execute that change. So we now have, which is showing us the flight plan page, and it's saying we're going from Stansted to Stansted, but it doesn't know how we're doing that yet. So we will at least go into the departure and say we're leaving on runway 22, and we'll execute that. So it's now saying EGSS 22. Then we'll go to the arrival. We'll say we're going to do the ILS into 22, and we'll execute that. So we're not using a standard instrument departure or a standard approach route, so the only waypoints it's put in so far is the ILS waypoints. So we have a big discontinuity. Let's go and have a look at our flight plan. We're going to go from Stansted to EFIS first. Echo, Kilo, Victor, Echo, Golf. EFIS. Excuse me. And then next we're going to go over to Oduku. So Oscar, Delta, Uniform, Kilo, Uniform. And we'll drop that next. And then Brain, BRAIN, Bravo, Romeo, Alpha, India, November. There we go. And there are two brains, so we'll go for the one in England, which is obviously the correct one. Next we go up to Abbott, so Alpha, Bravo, Bravo, Oscar, Tango. Drop that on top of the discontinuity. Now we need to go to the next page in order to put the last ones in. So up gear, so Uniform, Papa, Golf, India, Romeo, and drop that on top of the discontinuity, and then we can clear out the discontinuity, and as soon as we execute it will calculate the fuel on block estimates and the estimated time en route. Okay, so it's only a couple of minutes look on each leg. It's really quite a short flight. So if we go, and I'm just looking through my notes to make sure that we've covered everything we need to here. We haven't put a cruise altitude in, so on the perf page we can put in our cruise altitude somewhere. So perf initialization, cruise altitude, here we go. So we'll put in 5,000 feet just for today. Okay, so then we go back overhead and we get on with programming the rest of the flight plan, or sorry, programming the rest of the aeroplane. So we turn the seatbelt sign on. The beacon light is already on. And we go through engine start now, which looks horrendous written down in the checklist, but it's actually quite straightforward. So we turn the pump on for engine number 2. We turn the ignition to start A and B on the ignition system, and then we hit the starter for engine number 2 and it lights up with on. If we look down in the cockpit, you will see the NH% coming up for engine number 2. Once it gets past 10%, you can advance the condition lever to feather. And once it gets to, actually we don't have to push it all the way to auto straight away. We can do this later in the checklist, but we'll do it now. It's not going to hurt anything. Okay, so then back overhead we can go and turn on the pump for engine number 1, hit the starter for engine number 1, and same deal again. We wait for this to get to 10%, 8, 9, 10, and then we can advance this to feather on the fuel condition lever for engine number 1, and you'll see it continue on round, and then we can advance it on to auto. So both engines are now running. We can now go and turn the start system off. Notice the starters have turned off all on their own. I'm just scrolling further through the checklist. So post engine start we press Control 6. We look at the main electric power section. We're going to go and turn on the generators now on each engine. Notice they say fault. As soon as you disable the external power, they take over from external power. So we can then jump back over to the tablet and we can go to the aircraft and we can remove the ground power. So then Control 6, brings us back to the roof. Now you will notice this is a common design feature of Aerospatiale and Airbus aircraft, that buttons that need your attention tend to be lit up. So we can work our way just in a straightforward flow around the cockpit now and say hydraulic power, let's go and turn on the hydraulic power. The AC generation, AC, alternating current, let's go and turn on the generators for AC. The windshield heating, the probe heats, and the oxygen system. And we are pretty much good to go at that point. So we'll come and look down in the cockpit. So next thing we need to do is calibrate the altimeter, so we can shortcut that by pressing B and you will see the altitude change. If you want to do that by hand, it's over here. We are going to set the flaps for takeoff, which would be 15 degrees, so I've moved my flap lever on my quadrant. We're now going to press Control and 3 to go to the tablet again. We're going to remove the wheel chocks. So again, if we had left the propellers on feather, this won't cause an issue, but I wanted to do this on purpose to show you. If we remove the wheel chocks now and sit up, we will probably start moving. He says, famous last words. That's rather interesting, actually. I thought we were going to start moving there. Okay, not to worry. So next we're going to remove the gust lock. Oh, it's because we've got an emergency brake, sorry. This is me making mistakes because I'm just not practiced enough. There's an emergency brake lever here and we have to release it. Once we've done that, yeah, we have positive thrust look because the engines are not on feather. So normally this is why you would leave them at feather and you would only engage auto on the propeller condition when you are basically ready to go, because there is an amount of positive thrust. Okay, so as we taxi out, it will be worth having a look at the master control panel and the lights, obviously. So we want to go and put the taxi lights on. The nav light's already on, beacon light's already on. The strobes we won't put on until we're on the runway, so we'll double check that when we get to the runway. So let's just find our way out to the runway at Stansted, and let's go and look at the master control panel while we're doing this. So we want to ideally set nav mode to be pre-selected, so it said LNAV now above the artificial attitude display there, and we can go for VNAV as well. But before we do that, let's go and set a target altitude. So I'm going to roll this knob and we're looking at this number here. So we're going to get it for 5,000 feet, we said, didn't we? So there's 5,000. And we'll use VNAV. So we can see VNAV IAS, indicated airspeed, and LNAV. So it's worth noting the throttles in this aircraft, you can set a target airspeed here. So we're going to set it for 200 knots. Let's see where we're going first before we go and crash the aeroplane before we even get to the runway. Okay, so we've set a target airspeed for 200 knots, we've set the altitude, so we should be good to go. But it's worth pointing out this does not have an auto throttle, so you need to be careful. Right, the only thing we haven't talked about is the power management system. So it's in takeoff mode at the moment. As soon as we get off the runway, we will actually move it to climb and then cruise. Also, it's worth pointing out on the throttles, as you move the throttles forwards, this is the notch detent, and then max power is right at the far end of the travel. And then there's, oh, I can't remember the red one, what it's called. It's in the tablet. If we go and have a quick look at the tablet. If we go to options, throttle setup, it's called ramp. Yeah? So for normal flight operations, you will only ever leave the throttle in notch. And it takes it to almost 100% on the propellers. Okay, so we'll advance the throttles to notch. You can see those graphs over here, also the pie charts. Oh, we've got a massive crosswind. So I'm pushing against the crosswind, which has caught the tail, to get us back onto the centre line. So we're coming up to 120 knots, at which point we'll gently rotate. So off the ground, we're airborne. Gear up. Flaps up. And let's trim the elevators. The noise you can hear is the trim. Makes quite a comical noise. So all we need to do now is engage autopilot. And your damper has come on automatically, and it's going on LNAV and VNAV to fly the route for us. Okay. So there are elements of this I still don't know very well, like this panel down here which shows you checklists, and it's not very obvious how it works. The controls for it are down here, so you can move the focus through things. Okay, so let's keep an eye on this airspeed. Remember, it's not an automatic pilot, sorry, not an auto throttle. So what it's doing is using the power available to it to continue climbing at the rate dictated by the speed we're doing. So if we do push the throttles on, it will turn that into a higher climb rate. It won't accelerate. Does that make sense? So if I pull the throttles back to notch, it just won't climb as fast. So if you wanted to see our nice route on here, all you need to do is press the ND button on the pedestal, and you get a really nice view. If you want an even better view, if there's a roller next to it, if you turn that, you get a massive arc mode, which is really lovely. So we're flying out towards Ekvij. So it's worth pointing out, these buttons here on the metal panel control the bottom half of this screen. So you can go to COM radios, which we've got at the moment, the nav radios, and the serve. I'm not sure what it stands for, but within there, this is a touch screen. You've got TCAS. Look, we're overspeeding, aren't we? Oh no, we're not. That was just a marker. Don't worry. I wondered if we'd already got to 5,000 feet. Oh, that was the klaxon telling us we were within 1,000 feet of 5,000. So here we can see the target marker. So it won't be able to contain the airspeed now because it's leveling out. So the aeroplane's going to start accelerating, look, beyond 200 knots. So now it's up to us to pull the throttle back away from notch to reduce our acceleration. So the aeroplane has now reached 5,000 feet and leveled out automatically on the VNAV. And it's beginning its turn at Ekvij. So this is really all about me just transferring the knowledge I've gained so far about this aeroplane in the last 12 hours or whatever it's been, and sharing it with you. Some things I'm still not sure of. Some of the actual procedural things I'm not 100% sure about. So we're getting an icing warning popping up. I don't think we really need to worry about it. It's not that cold today. But if we did, the icing controls are all up here, and there's lots and lots of them. So it's over here, look, you can turn on all manner of icing controls. We didn't set the emergency exit light. I've got that missing from my checklist. I will have to remember to go and do that. Also, for a commercial aircraft flying below 10,000 feet, you would normally have the landing lights on, so we're going to switch those on. We can get rid of that master caution. Okay, we are flying. If we go and look on little nav map, it's very good at keeping track of the route. Look, it predicts the corner radiuses very well. But that's because we're keeping a consistent speed. Notice though that airspeed is creeping up, so you do have to monitor it. Like I said, it's not an auto throttle. Okay, so while we're flying along, let's have a little look at some of these screens. So, the cluster of buttons on the corner of the pedestal actually controls this giant screen. So what we'll do is hold Alt-GR down on the keyboard and click on this so we can see it easily. Make it a bit smaller, so you can see it. There we go. And then I can zoom in down here on the keyboard to show you what this does. So that's the ND screen, and it has various different modes, which if you roll the roller you can see the different modes. So there's the full compass rose, there's the arc mode, and there's the north oriented view of us flying around the flight plan. If you want to zoom in and out, you've got range here, so you can increase the range. Yeah, so you can see the entire flight plan if you really want to. You can see systems information on here, and you can click it repeatedly to get different systems. It's very cool, isn't it? You can see performance information. You can see a not available section. There is video of the back of the airplane, it's just a still image. And there's also a map view, which obviously makes more sense if you zoom out. So we're not going to worry too much about that. We've got to zoom back in, don't we? So if we just close that, that will put it back into the aircraft down here. So I just thought that was a useful way of showing you what's going on with that screen. I think you can do that with all the screens on the aircraft. It behaves itself in terms of popping the screens out, so if you have got multiple screens you can play those games. It's quite nice. Okay, so let's go and have a look around the cockpit, shall we? So over here we've got the electrical monitoring systems, which are quite cool. Under a cover, there's lots of panels open up and things appear to be clickable that you wouldn't expect to be. There's a nose wheel steering system which is on by default, which is quite interesting. There's just target airspeed controller there, which is used for climb and descent, you know, when you're on LNAV. We saw that there's the barometric pressure setting as well. It's very good. Oh, we didn't set this, did we? We should be in cruise. So now we've changed to cruise mode, we need to keep an eye on the airspeed. So let's also zoom out on this screen so we can see the next waypoint coming. So we'll increase the range. So we're going towards Brain at the moment. So what we'll do while we're travelling towards Brain is try out descending back to 3,000 feet. So we're going to change the target altitude to 3,000. And we'll see what the airplane's going to do about that. How's it going to get there? If we cut the throttle, I imagine it will decelerate until we get to the target airspeed, but if we increase the target airspeed, it will probably start expediting its descent, because it can now accelerate to get to 220. So let's see what it does with that vertical speed. How is VNAV going to manage this? It's not going to. Okay. So do we have to just go to speed hold? See, there's various bits of this. I'm not sure if the aircraft's not working or if I'm not doing things right. So what we could do though is go to vertical speed mode and then just set our vertical speed using the roller. So you can see the number here. So we've said 14, which would be 1400 feet a minute. So if we said 2000 feet a minute, obviously we're going to drop like a stone. So you can see there's the indicated, the descent rate has dropped to 2000 feet a minute. And we're coming down, we're within 1000 feet of 3000, that's why we just heard the klaxon. Coming in towards Brain, then Abbott, then Upkeer, and then back in towards Stansted. It'd be interesting to try out approach mode as well. So if we go and just double check this and see what it's given us in terms of, if we say nav here, and ILS, it's saying 109.3, is that the ILS? No, it's 110.5. So what we need to do is go in here and put in 110.5. So we need to get to these numbers here. 110.5. And then press enter. So that's put the ILS in for us. We'll need to put the course in as well to be appropriate to the ILS, which will be 222 degrees. So let's go and get the course on nav1. We will need to, in order to do this, we'll wait until we make the final turn. In order to set the course, we will need this to be not in flight manager mode, but in ILS mode. And then all the symbology will change. Obviously trying to set the course now is going to do nothing because it's following the GPS route because it's in FMS mode essentially. So this is your kind of master mode of how the aeroplane nav mode is navigating. At the moment it's following the GPS route. Yeah, and you can see that being reflected by this kind of hybrid course deviation indicator. We're going a bit slow, so we're going to accelerate back to a notch. Let's just, out of interest, turn off the icing controls because it's not that cold. If I could click the buttons correctly. Didn't want to do that. And see if we're still getting icing warnings. Or see if we do get any ice fall. I mean, it's quite a cloudy day, but I didn't think it was sub-zero. Do we get the temperature on the screen anywhere? From the sensors? Don't think we do. And this, oh, it's over here. So it's 8 degrees. So we're edging towards 250 knots, so we need to come off those throttles. Stop the acceleration. So what might be nice to do now, excuse me, is actually go to heading mode and try some of these modes out. So we'll get the heading pointing the same direction we're going at the moment. We're going to revert then to heading mode on the autopilot. We'll also go to altitude hold mode. So there you go, altitude hold and heading select. And we're going to turn the heading through to cut the corner off. We're also going to change this to ILS mode. So we can change the course now, if you remember, to 222 degrees. Notice that's being reflected by the indication here. So we now have a course of 222 degrees. So that's the direction of the runway relative to us. So let's go and turn this heading around a bit more. Shall we see if we can make this look a bit more interesting on the screen? Maybe zoom in. So turn the heading. So we're just playing with modes really. We're not doing correct procedures as such. So we're just going to turn the aeroplane to go the same direction, and then we should see we've already got the signal from the ILS is showing up. So obviously it's off of the screen at the moment. Ideally, if we come in from underneath the ILS, we can play some games with that and go for approach mode and see what happens. So we need to turn a bit more. Okay, so we're heading now directly for the waypoint for up gear. We are at 3,000 feet with altitude hold mode on the autopilot. And we're going to start bleeding some speed off. So you can see the runway out in the distance. So let's try it. Let's go for approach mode. So what does the symbology say? Lock. So we've got the diamonds are appearing. So we are in the neighbourhood of the signal. Let's see if it captures it. So at the moment it's in altitude hold. Will it continue to do that when the diamond hits, or will that change? So this is where I don't have an operating handbook, so I can't tell you. Obviously if it doesn't, yes, it's captured the glide slope, look. So it's done it. Perfect. So we should see it start to descend. And then obviously we need to manage speed on the way down. And it's descending. So it's hit the glide slope, it's captured it. It's also captured the localizer. So let's get the speed off now. So we'll put the spoilers out to get some of the speed off. So let's have a look at the spoilers and see what they look like. So if yeah, they're just these small flaps on the end of the wings. They don't lift a great deal, or is that just trim tabs? I'm not sure. How does this do spoiling? And this is of course not working for some reason. Oh, I don't think it is. Okay, so gear down, which obviously will introduce a lot of drag. So, I don't believe this has auto land. So I'm going to have to get to a decision height and take over. And rather than panic when we get to the last moment and have to struggle to get a feel for where the aeroplane is, I'm going to disable the autopilot right now. So this is me in control. Just to prove that, we'll give the aeroplane a wiggle. So we're going to keep an eye on the indicated airspeed. We're going to start feeding the flaps in now. And we're going to keep an eye on the ILS beam. So you look at the amount of lift that flap has given us. It's kicked us right above the glide slope within a few seconds. That's the trim that you can hear. So slowly feeding in more flaps. But that is pushing us high. So I'm having to go slightly nose down to correct for that. still high, but the PAPI lights mysteriously look correct. So this is a known issue with Flight Simulator. The glide slope and the PAPI lights often don't agree with each other.
500.
I'm going to start introducing some throttle to stop us from decelerating too much. Got a bit too much on the throttle there. Yeah, you can see at the moment we're slightly low. So we're just raising the nose gently. Keep an eye on the airspeed though, because we will obviously lose airspeed for lifting
200.
the nose. So we've gone high now. It's very, yeah, it's a little bit floaty, but we can soon correct for this. Don't worry.
50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
And we're down. So it does have reversers. Oh, we're having to put in a bootload of rudder to keep it straight. The reversers are really, really strong. Or should I say reverse pitch is really, really strong. Okay, so we'll raise the flaps and taxi off the runway. So hopefully you found this interesting. Obviously every time we take this aeroplane up we are learning more and more about it, about how it behaves, how to operate it. So in the absence of any official guides on it about what's implemented and how it works, it really is a group effort at the moment for everybody to pool what they have learned. So I'm doing my bit here. I've figured out how the control's configured. I've figured out most of the primary avionics systems. There's bits and pieces that are broken. If you try and program airways into the flight management computer, it will break. I have tried it. Your mileage may vary, of course, based on the route that the specific route that you program. But I've seen it completely lose its mind when I tried to put an airway in. Okay, I don't think there's probably much value to be had in watching me taxi all the way back and shut everything down. So I'm going to leave it here. Hopefully you enjoyed this today. So this was another flight in the ATR in Microsoft Flight Simulator. We are slowly learning more and more about it. Okay, I'll see you again soon.